Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men ask for the right words to say to be more successful, attractive, and desirable. But I found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines because every man is different. So giving words or scripts would be like giving a tall, thin man a shorter, wider man's pants, or vice versa. The words have to make sense for you and your personality, and there's so much happening beneath the surface that people are responding to. If you're interested in how to become a better lover and leader in your own unique way, go to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz, or you can text ALIVE to 44144. It only takes a couple minutes and you'll start to get an idea of how you can be both more respected and desired. After you fill it out, we can schedule a time to review your quiz and talk about your specific challenges and desires. So again, go to either shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text ALIVE to 44144. That's ALIVE to 44144. Enjoy this episode of Man Alive. Hello and welcome to Man Alive. I'm your host, Shana James, and I am so excited to be here today with Gay Hendricks. I would call you one of the mothers or grandmothers or however you like to be called. I don't want to insult you. One of our mentors of conscious loving, one of the biggest, one of the best. And thank you so much for being here with us today and for all the work you've done to teach people to love consciously and to show that you're in a relationship with Gay for 40 years, is it at this point?
Well, actually, we've been in a relationship 42 years, but we celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary last year.
Amazing. And loving what I see from the two of you is the vibrancy, the love, the aliveness. It's just deepening over time and such an incredible inspiration. Most of us do not have any examples of
Well, that's one of the reasons that we show up, and particularly that we show up together, because we want people to see what is possible. We didn't know what was possible. It's not as if we just kind of fell into this because when we got together, we knew one couple who had a really great relationship, and then they split up. And so we really just decided to dream it up, and everything that we teach, we practice. And so we know from our own relationship, but also working with thousands of people all over the world, that if people will give themselves a chance to practice these skills, they really do work.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. So when you say they work, can you give us a sense of what are you experiencing with Gay that, what is it like? Because it's hard to put words to it sometimes.
It is hard to put words to it. One of the things we invite people to do is, if they're reading anything of ours or if they're seeing a video, is to let themselves kind of drink it in, to take it in with all of their senses, to not try to figure out why, but to really, as if when you look at a movie, sometimes you can get so absorbed in the movie that you think you're in the movie.
Oh, yes.
Well, we invite you to go ahead and come into the movie and go, whoa, I don't know what it is they're doing, but I really want that. And to let yourself do what we call osmosing, that you just,
or what, not overly mentalizing it or trying to
No, because mentalizing it keeps you in a very smart part of your consciousness. But if you let your whole body experience and take that in, almost as if it's a kind of a dance that you're entering into, then you get the benefit of, I would say, one of the things that really surprised me is that I feel both a depth of knowing, this deep depth of knowing, and freshness at the same time. And for me, that occurs on this kind of vertical dimension, because we're changing all of the time, but it's in a way of expanding our ability to give and receive more love. Yes. That's our biggest commitment that we hold. And so every day I'm living into, how can I expand my capacity to give and receive? So that's one of the things that I keep finding new things to appreciate about Gay. new things to appreciate about what opens between us. That was really surprising, is what some people call the we space.
Yep,
There's something else that, yeah, the relational space has its own entity.
Yes.
It's not him or me, it's this other space that we can both feel into. It's renewing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a place to rest into.
Yeah.
And it gives me the sense that I don't have to be anything other than myself. I can be, it was something I'd never experienced in my whole life, that the more I open up to my own authentic self, the more Gay loves that and can feel like the dimensions in me. It's like the facets, you know, of a jewel that, and as the light of our consciousness keeps shining, there we just keep developing more ways of experiencing each other. So the element of discovery, because you think one of the characteristics, you know, one of the myths of long-term relationship is that, you know, it's the same old. You can
we already know each other. No one's
compromises, you know. That's just complete bunk. That what you can keep doing is expanding your own. I like to think of us as different instruments in an orchestra, and that each of us has our own unique way of being in the world, but it also blends with the other instruments in the orchestra to create a unique melody. And it's the melody that has become just so incredibly interesting.
This is so beautiful.
You had something that came up.
So I love what you're saying. It's so beautiful. And to me, you're speaking my language. And I have that sense too. To me, it's a spiritual practice too, of like, okay, who am I and who is my partner and who are we becoming? And, you know, the authenticity piece of I can be me. And I have learned through lots and lots of work and struggle, right, that I can bring those really vulnerable, authentic parts. And when I imagine someone listening to you who hasn't, you know, done 20 or 30 years of work, that those are those really scary moments, right? Like, wait, I can really show this part and my partner's going to love me more. Isn't that going to make my partner want to leave? And so how do you support people in those crux moments?
Well, one of the things that I noticed several years ago is that at the base of all problems is the problem of fear. And that when people are stuck in fear, there are two things that happen. One is that I'm not able to think. So, because I go into reptilian brain and you go into reptilian brain and we have Godzilla versus King Kong, and there's no thinking that's going on. And the other thing that happens is
there's a lot of thinking, right? But it's not clear thinking. It's like a lot of.
Well, I wouldn't even call it thinking because you're not using your problem solving brain. I would call it reaction.
There you go. Yeah.
You know, so reactivity, survival, depending on the old patterns. So moving into force and control, you know, and escalating the adrenaline and mistaking that for contact.
Yes. Okay, great.
Because the other thing that happens is if I'm in fear, you look like the enemy. But I'm not aware of that because I'm not in my problem solving brain. And so when I go into you're the enemy, it justifies my using force over, my trying to control you, my criticizing because you're the enemy. And so that disconnection, I think, is one of the biggest problems that we're experiencing right now, is because people are feeling isolated. They're not, and they go into the addictions to try to get some kind of nourishment. But as we know now, the only antidote to addiction is connection. But if I'm in fear, I can't connect. So the long story short, I've invented a whole body of work to help people befriend fear. And that includes something I call fear melters, which are
I know these are so
body movements that allow us to move from fear to presence. So I think of it not as a panacea, but as a portal. So if I'm using fear melters, and I'm doing one of them now, I'm doing oozing, which is the antidote to fight. And if I'm oozing, I cannot fight in that moment. It gives me the opportunity to connect with you, to connect with my partner in a way that allows us to receive nourishment from each other. Because
Beautiful.
in fear, I'm not receiving any nourishment. And I go to adrenaline, just like people go to chocolate and go to liquor. And, because I think it's good, while I'm eating it, it's wonderful. And then it wears off. And adrenaline gives you that,
In the moment.
being right in the moment, but then it drains off very quickly. And because it's a short acting addictive drug, you have to get more of it. And so people then tend to escalate the drama, which is so much of what we see going on around us. And it's so hurtful to relationship because it solidifies that sense of being enemies. So the first thing I do with clients is look at what's your fear signature? How do you know when you're scared?
Right.
And what can you do right now to move from fear to presence? Something that you can practice so that you can begin seeing your partner as an ally.
I love that.
And that was one of the biggest moves for me in my relationship with Gay, was taking on the commitment of seeing him as my ally. Because we both came from very critical families and we're both very smart and very stubborn. And so we would go to our critical corners and we would lob criticism at each other. So one of the things we decided really early on in our relationship is that we were going to stop that.
Beautiful.
We went cold turkey on blame and criticism.
No blame, no criticism.
And what we did instead was in that moment, we moved to genuine appreciation, which was, first of all, being sensitively aware of. It's not a Pollyanna move. It's really giving my sensitive awareness, as if I'm, when you see a new baby, and you want to touch and you give that very sensitive awareness and you're looking at all the different qualities and really taking in this newness. Imagine looking at your partner and at yourself the same way. So moving from criticism to appreciation is the number one move that allows people to open up the space to be able to explore rather than being in fear and in that cringe of fear that most people are in right now.
I love that. And I'm appreciating that you said you made a commitment, because I've had some of those, I committed after my divorce 10 years ago that I was not going to speak until I could say something that was kind and caring and was going to forward a situation, right? And that commitment feels like it has been the fundamental, underlying part of why I'm now having conscious relationships. And so I could see that, right? It's it's so easy to overlook that word, but I feel like when we make those commitments to ourselves and our partners.
Well, the act of committing, in fact, I'm going to stand up for just a minute to illustrate that the act of committing is actually stepping in. You're stepping in fully. So most of the time people in relationships sort of like this, one foot in, one foot out, and kind of looking to see what the other, but when you commit, you go, okay, I'm in. I'm in.
Which I imagine would help settle the other person's nervous system.
Exactly. And it's something, a lot of people say, well, I can't be myself because it would hurt the other person's feelings, or I'm afraid of how they're going to respond. But when you commit, that's between you and the universe.
You're
saying to the universe, I'm in. So regardless of what the other person does, here I am.
Okay.
And I can recommit. So the other thing that has just been revolutionary is that committing is just the beginning.
Right. Yes.
So committing, people go, okay, I committed. And then if I forget the commitment or I lose it, I failed. Instead of looking at, okay, now it's time to recommit. So what a lot of people do is they break the commitment and then they beat up on themselves and then they feel bad and then they have it. And all of that has no transformative value. So we think that works. If I just blame myself, it's like doing penance. But the only thing that really works is to recommit. And then I'm using all of my attention to move in a chosen direction rather than kind of spinning around in this little eddy, where I'm not really going anywhere.
Right, which
I
really
sometimes, we have a pool out and back, and one of the big things I do when I'm swimming is save bees. So when they're in there and they're going round and round, and I bring one of my little pool toys underneath them, sometimes, they get all frantic, but if they let me just lift them, then they can make a new move. But if they're caught in then they generally go under. Right. So I think that the less attention we give to drama, and the more to simply recommitting, the more we move.
Actually have to feel. I was just getting a sense when you said that we have to feel the vulnerability and the tenderness,
the openness.
Yeah,
because the fear protects us. We contract in fear. Openness, can bring more like, oh gosh, what's going to happen? I don't know. And that vulnerability is also a place where fear can come in, where people then kind of covered up, with a role or being tough or saying, that didn't really affect me. I don't, nothing's wrong. The whole, what I call the British exchange with something wrong. Are you all right?
Oh,
the other person says, I'm fine.
Nothing to see here.
Nothing to see here. But really letting another person in, I think is what so many people long for. And so many people are really, really scared of. And I have felt most appreciated and most valued when Gay lets me in. And most
men who are listening, right? That when he actually lets you in, he
lets me in to be with him. Like recently, his brother, it's his last living relative, has Parkinson's. And the disease had been progressing. And so he was talking to his brother who lives on the other side of the country. And I could tell that it was really affecting him. And then to be able to be with him as he's just feeling his feelings and sharing those with me, I could feel what a support that was for him, but also what gift it was for me. To be able to just simply be with him. And a lot of people say, oh, I have to fix it, or I have to, make it go away, or tell him that there's nothing to be scared of. But instead, just simply presencing, being with, is such a gift to both of us. And I could feel him moving through that and making choices and, being able to be of support to his brother, but also not sacrificing his own wholeness, his own sense of himself in what's a challenging situation, because his brother is, in the process of dying. So it's not immediate, but
not immediate, and it's not easy. So, okay, can we stay with this one for?
Please. Oh yeah, please.
So I'm imagining a man listening and hearing you say, okay, it was a gift that he was vulnerable with you.
Yes.
I think some men recognize, oh, I really want that. I want my partner, if the heterosexual relationship or any relationship, I want my partner to be, to hold space for me, to love me. Some men are like, wait, what? I can't even conceive of that. And so how do you work with the men who, are starting to try to, like, okay, I could imagine maybe starting to be more vulnerable and receiving love from my partner, but what would I even say, or how do I bring it up, and how do I do it,
Well, one of the ways we play with that is what we call persona play. That we, nobody lives all the time in their essence. So what we say is that essence, who you really are at your core, we all start out that way, but sometimes very early on, your essence becomes inconvenient for your caretakers. So we adopt roles, and those roles are doings. So our essence is our being. And most of the time for babies, we go, oh, and we just appreciate their essence. But then when people get grown up, we load all of these other roles on them. And so what we do is actually play with what were the roles that you learned that would get you attention. Because here's the thing, that human beings require attention. we need attention as much as food and water. And people don't realize that, like, oh, I don't need attention. I mean, and particularly men are raised with this, well, we don't really need attention. We provide attention for others. We're the providers. And so actually playing, we have something we call the persona interview that we've used for many, many years that allows people to get acquainted with their different roles and to actually begin to play with them rather than being at the grip of them.
Yes.
So we're not asking people to like go naked in the world, which is really impossible, but to wear your personas the way that you would wear different clothing.
Right.
Because personas,
you're conscious of them. So then you can take them on and put them off versus, it's stuck to me and I can't.
Yeah, I'm stuck. And if I take this off, I'm afraid there's going to be nothing underneath it. And so recognizing that to get along in the world, you need personas. And so one of the things we look at with couples and partners, because it goes for colleagues and friends as well, is what's your attention economy?
Ooh.
In your relationship. So what are the ways you like to get attention? Are you getting attention the way you really like to? So a lot of times men have not ever actually even asked that. Like, and so in our latest relationship book, Conscious Loving Ever After, we actually have something we call customizing appreciation, because appreciation is the cleanest, most nurturing kind of attention that you can give to yourself. And it also gives you the most ROI. It gives you the most return right away on your investment. And when especially men start learning, like, I'm not trying to get you to get rid of those roles because those have been useful for you. You use those because they worked. That's what we forget, is that I like to say that people come into a party that was already going on. When you were born, you didn't get to have the party hats. Some of those were already given out. Like in my family, my older brother had already gotten the hat that was called number 1. And so when I came in, I literally developed some number 2 personas. So, I think it's Avis, the Avis car company used to have a tagline, "We're number 2, we try harder." And that it was absolutely my MO. Yeah. So through all my life, I was trying harder because I was number 2. And so when I met Gay, he's as much older than me as my older brother. And so some of our early dramas were about number 1 and number 2, because he was already a published author. I'm this crazy, weird dance therapist person who makes, has people move to,
It's a little less, in the norm of our culture.
So, and so the sense of where do you get your value and what kind of attention are you giving and receiving in your relationships is something that we really circle around and keep coming back to. But seeing how we can simply loosen the grip of personas so that you can wear them when you want to and that you can release them when you don't really need them. It's really like having a very well-appointed closet, where you can. I think for this meeting, I'm going to
choose this persona. Well, and the brilliance of, for couples who haven't, who don't know about this, right? I often find there's a meta conversation around, okay, how do we want to treat each other? How do we want to listen to each other? Right? And so for this sense of, we have these personas. How do our personas relate to each other?
And then that becomes incredibly fascinating, because my number 2 persona then required Gay to be number 1, because otherwise I wouldn't have somebody to play with. So we then realized that we're setting up patterns with each other that we can change.
Yeah.
We can loosen them. And the only effective way I found to do that is by playing. People will not let go of a persona if you're shaming them or you're trying to coerce them or you're criticizing them or saying, oh, you're doing that again. When are you going to stop doing that? But to actually play with by exaggerating, because when we do the persona interview with people, we have them actually like, how do you stand when you're in this persona? And what are your facial expressions? And now do that more.
Now exaggerate it.
Yeah, exaggerate it. And then the persona gets a name. And then we ask the persona things like, what are you most proud of? And when did you make your first appearance?
Wow.
And it's been the people, I can see them just open up to, oh, this whole learning thing can actually be fun.
Yeah.
I can discover rather than thinking that there's something fundamentally wrong with me.
Right.
So that whole original sin piece is, I think, what people are really struggling with of, there's something fundamentally wrong with me. My partner's going to find out about it unless I cover it up.
I cover it up and protect myself. And
I protect myself and I let know everything's fine and I'm fine.
Yeah.
So that whole opening, I think, is the lifelong practice of close relationship, is that you get to open more and more and more. One of the things Gay and I are experiencing, and this got amplified during the pandemic, is we literally had the same thoughts at the same time.
Wow.
And for really valuable, important things, but also things like, are we going to have lettuce? Are we going to go for lettuce? Or are we going to go for sauerkraut? And we're both, or like, oh, I want to ride my bike. And so
there's such a beautiful syncing between the two.
Yes, there's a syncing, but it's not a solidifying or a losing of our identity. It's really
so it's not like you're separate. You're not losing your freedom or anything.
No, like or our individuality, but we have all of this at the same time, which sounds really weird. I don't quite have words for it yet. So I feel myself fully, but I also feel Gay fully.
Yes.
I feel the dance between us, but I also feel the space around us.
Yes.
That gets generated by that interaction. And it creates all kinds of magic, just in terms of, things showing up that we need, new people that could benefit, that not only we could benefit from, but the things that we're doing in the world. So meeting people that could further this larger goal of ours of creating a world where everybody is expressing themselves authentically and focusing on their creativity, but also taking responsibility for their choices. That's one thing that's kind of missing right now, is of people taking responsibility
for their choices. Thank you. I'm wondering if we could go back a little bit to the other side of the dynamic.
Oh, sure. We can go anywhere.
Okay. So there's the revealing side, and then there's the receiving someone's revelation.
Yes.
Like you said, okay, sometimes people think they have to fix or they have to change or they have to do, and just, being there and being loving is really where it's at. And I think a lot of the men I work with, they get a little like, wait, what? I just being, what, how?
That's not enough. I'm not, where are my tools and where can, yeah. So I had, because that was Gay's filter when we first got together, was, he could pretty much fix anything in the, the mental or psychological realm. And so if I was expressing something, he would immediately go, well, maybe you should just breathe some more. Or maybe, and
about this. Have you tried this?
And so I remember one day just saying to him, I would really like to just have you listen. I don't need you to fix me. And he was able to hear that. So that was also
that, right. That's on his,
Yeah, that was, yes.
Can actually receive and not defend and be like, well, I'm doing my best, or I'm trying, this is what needs to happen, or.
Right. Going immediately. And that's also going more mental rather than going into feelings.
Yes.
And so we have kind of a presencing frame that we suggest to people, which I think is useful for men, which is the first thing is actually turning fully toward. People don't realize, especially if, because we have so many things going on, this whole multitasking thing. So to actually give your full attention to your partner or your colleague. So that is a physical turning toward. And then sometimes a physical turning toward comes with some little distortions in posture.
Trust or frowning
or but closing up in some way. So literally opening your body. So turning toward opening your body. And then the most important thing, breathing. Because when people get scared, they stop breathing. And so if you're feeling, oh gosh, she's going to say something, and oh dear, I don't know what I'm going to, people stop breathing. So if you turn toward, open your body, and then really focus on relaxing your belly on the in-breath. So if you're going to tighten on the out-breath. You can do a little on the out-breath and then opening on the in-breath. And that way, you've got a frame for you to begin to practice. So if you're wondering what to do, focus on those three things. Breathing, like, did I stop breathing? Okay, I'm going to breathe again. Now, for me, that involves also moving. I can't breathe without moving. And so a lot of people too get frozen in their bodies. And so just doing a little bit of movement keeps you present. And then, in fact, on our, in the last few years, I've developed our foundation's website, which is foundationforconsciousliving.org. And it's full of free videos about how to do these things.
Beautiful.
And so on we have something called the basic toss. And that is to keep the interaction going. And so it's a very fun activity, but the basis of it is these three things that you say. Tell me more. What interests you most about that? And then what happened? And those three things are so reliable for keeping the interaction going. So I'm not bringing in, well, why'd you feel that way?
Right.
I thought we'd worked that out already. But if you keep yourself, like if you use these three things and you practice, simply even tell me more. And even though Gay knows these, they still work with him. They seem really simple. And especially what interests you most about that. That's one of Gay's favorites. Because then he can go into, oh, really, what is that interests me? And then it takes him into more discovery. So if
people play with those a little bit, like, what matters to you most about that? Or why is that important to you? Is it okay to shift the language?
I would stay away from why.
Okay.
Because why takes you mental. So at the beginning, I've really found that people do much better if they just simply stay with these. Follow the template, and then you can play with it. But I want people to be able, because these work. The reason that we suggest them is that we've tried them out with lots and lots of people, and they actually do work. And they work really well too if you add in fear melters. So if I get scared when I'm listening, I just add in the fear melters, which are also on the website, showing you how to do it, videos showing you how to do it. And what we found is that your intention is really palpable. So even if you're awkward, you don't do it quite right, you mess up, the other person really can feel your intention to connect.
I was going to say that it's like, if you're actually in your heart and you can feel your heart, and some people need help with that. Then, it goes over really well, even if it's awkward, but it is hard sometimes for people to access their heart and really feel that care when they're feeling either on the spot, like I've got to do something, or I will be not good enough. Or, if there's a sense of frustration between the two people. I love that your little cat's paws sticking out.
Oh, yes. she's cleaning herself. I'm going to just, there's a cat for all of you. This is Allie. Allie loves to be with me when I'm, she does have her leg up like a semi-4. What I have found is that when people react in that way, are not able to go into their hearts, is because they've been wounded in their hearts. And generally, as kids, because very open-hearted, wanting to, can feel the distress of a parent, wanting to help, and then being shut down in some way or another. That wound, acknowledging that for, I think, anybody who can really feel the wound in the heart, that's where we love. One of our fear melters is called Love Scoops, where you reach out and you bring in love and you give it to any place where you're feeling that distress. And so the combination of these body intelligence skills takes us into whole body learning rather than just head-centered.
Head-centered.
Mental, yeah.
The spin of it.
Yeah. Which we've all learned.
Yeah. This is so powerful. Thank you so much. And
you're so welcome.
We could do this for days, years. Yeah, I guess I'm curious if there's any last topic you want to cover before we
Well, I would say that what we have found is that no matter what your past has been, no matter what your relationship history is, you can create the relationship that you want. We've seen this so many times. So if you're willing to, you can begin opening up to first committing. So I'm commit to, or even I'm willing. That's a great place to start. I'm willing to learn how to create the relationship that I really want. And that begins taking you into some new choices. And then you take that step and you may get scared and you may forget everything. But then all you do is recommit and you get back in the path.
So even people who are struggling and having a hard time and they're feeling irritated or they're feeling angry or they're exploding or they're shutting down, or you've seen it all, right? People can actually.
Truly, we have seen it all because been at this and we've been practicing now for since there were rotary phones. That's how long we've been practicing. So we've seen lots and lots of people, and what's especially lovely is that the people who are often the most distrustful and skeptical, of course, when they flip over, it's like Paul on the road to Damascus. People become like, oh my gosh, this is so wonderful.
It really does seem like that. The degree to which someone protects themselves, right, to me, is the degree to which someone has such a tender and beautiful and open heart.
Yes, and that we can, with our own intentionality, we can welcome people's vulnerability and their strengths. So we have this. I think the other thing that I really want people to know is that we live in such an either or world right now. And that I think that we're being called as humans to be able to occupy polarities.
The full range and the polarity.
The full range. I love you and I'm really scared. I love you and I don't like what's happening right now. I want to do something different and I don't know how. I love you and I'm really mad. So those, and that they can exist at the same time.
Consciously.
Yes, consciously rather than sabotagingly.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much for this.
Oh, thank you. It's such a pleasure to connect with you. And I know that you're a good person because Allie is still here. She's very discerning because she's left the room on many occasions like, no, I'm out of here. So
I'm not doing this anymore. What's the best place for people to find more about your and Gay's work?
There are 3 places. So to find out about our seminars, where we have body intelligence and conscious loving seminars, you can go to Hendricks.com. And that's Hendricks with a CKS, not with an X. And if you want to find out more about fear, how to find your fear signature, how to the tossing, all of these different ways that you can support your growth and people you care about, you can go to foundationforconsciousliving.org. Awesome. And we have a Facebook page where we have daily relationship tips that have come from our work. I wrote all of them. So they're all
daily tips. Amazing.
Yeah. And lots and lots of, so every day. And that is either Hearts in Harmony or relationship advice. So we have a page on Facebook that we've had for a very long time.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to ShanaJamesCoaching.com/quiz or text the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144, or head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.